You ever do something that felt small in the moment, like a sigh or a step forward, but later, it echoes so loud inside you, you can't hear anything else? That's what this is for me. Not a memory. A ghost. 2 years ago. I opened a door. That's all. Just a door. But what came through it didn't knock. It didn't ask permission. It just came in. And by the time I realized what it truly was, it had already made itself at home inside me. I used to laugh at stories like this. You know, the ones you hear in whispers. She let them in. She crossed the line. She destroyed everything. I'd think, how could she? What kind of woman does that? Now I know. She's the kind of woman who's tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of watching her husband walk through her like she's furniture. Tired of waiting for the warmth to come back into her marriage, and realizing it never will. And the worst part? She never planned it. She didn't wake up wanting it. She didn't chase it. But when it showed up, when they showed up and smiled at her like they saw her, really saw her, she didn't run. She let them in. And I know how it sounds. It sounds selfish, ugly, shameful. But what if I told you it wasn't lust that pulled me in? It wasn't even about revenge. It was hunger. Not the kind you feel in your stomach. The kind that lives deeper than that. The hunger to be touched, not just skin, but soul. To be wanted. In the way you don't have to ask for. The kind of hunger that grows so quietly, you don't notice it until one day. You wake up starving. And that day? That one day when my husband left town for the weekend. And his 3 best friends came knocking? I opened the door. With a smile. With loneliness curled inside my chest like a second heart. With a voice in the back of my head saying, nothing will happen. It's just dinner. It's just company. It's just laughter. What harm could it do? That voice lied. Because what walked through that door wasn't just 3 familiar faces. It was something much more dangerous. Attention. Affection. Desire. Cloaked in familiarity. And I welcomed it. With wine glasses clinking and music playing low. With my bare feet on hardwood floors and a laugh I hadn't heard from myself in months. I let it all in. The looks. The warmth. The danger. And now? Now I live with the sound of that door, the click it made when it closed behind them. The way it echoed through the house like a secret being sealed. The way it changed the air. Because some doors, once opened, they don't close. They just stay there, wide open inside you, letting all your regrets walk in and out, whenever they feel like it. So here I am, 2 years later, still hearing the knock at night when the house goes quiet, still feeling the weight of that moment, pressing against my chest like a truth too heavy to carry and too dangerous to put down. And maybe I shouldn't tell this story. Maybe it makes me look weak, or reckless, or cruel. But I need to speak it, because pretending it never happened hasn't made it go away. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there understands. Someone who knows what it's like to be starving in a house full of silence. Someone who stood at a door, hand on the knob, knowing once they open it, they can never go back. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because some stories aren't just told. They're confessed. It wasn't the knock that changed everything. It was what I let in after. I'm 38. But some days, I feel much older than that. Like time has quietly passed me by, leaving me behind in my own life. My name doesn't matter so much here. What matters is the version of me that used to laugh without thinking, who used to feel wanted without effort, and who never questioned whether she still meant something to someone. That version feels like another woman now. Someone I used to know. I live in a 2-story house just outside the city. We bought it 10 years ago, back when Daniel still held my hand in public, when he'd race me up the stairs just to hear me squeal, when every room held a moment, kitchen kisses, hallway arguments that ended in make-up sex, living room dance-offs after too much wine. Now, the walls are quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of quiet that feels heavy. The kind that makes you want to fill it with something, anything. just to feel like you're still here. Daniel used to be warm. He used to pull me in close at night, ask me how my day went like he actually cared. But work became his escape, and home became mine. He's not cruel. He's not unfaithful. He's just gone in all the ways that count. And somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to reach for him. You can only reach so many times before your arms start to ache. Then there's his friends. They've been around for years, long before I met Daniel. Mark was always the funny one. He'd walk in cracking jokes, filling the room with energy that made it hard not to smile. But his eyes always looked like they were carrying something too heavy for laughter to fix. Caleb is different. Quiet. He watches more than he speaks, but when he does talk, it's the kind of thing that sticks with you. Once, at a dinner party, he said to me, "You don't realize how lonely someone is until you stop talking and just listen to the silence they live in." I never forgot that. It made me feel exposed. Like he saw something I didn't even know was showing. Then there's Jason. Jason knows he's attractive. He's smooth, always has the right words, the kind that make you feel like you're the only one in the room. And even though I always kept my guard up around him, I won't lie. His charm was a kind of comfort I didn't realize I craved. They were just Daniel's friends. Until they weren't. Until the day they knocked on my door and Daniel wasn't home, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone. That moment felt harmless. Just familiar faces on my doorstep. Just voices I'd known for years. But there was something in the air that day. Something I didn't know how to name at the time. A shift. A ripple. I used to think loneliness was a silent thing. Until it started whispering so loudly I could barely hear anything else. It was supposed to be just another Saturday. Daniel had invited the guys over, Mark, Caleb, and Jason, said there was a big football game on, and they hadn't all hung out in months. He asked if I could prep a few snacks, keep the fridge stocked with beers. The usual. I said sure. Not because I was looking forward to it, but because saying no to Daniel lately had started to feel like shouting into the wind. I made guacamole from scratch, cleaned up the living room, lit a few candles not for mood, just to make the place feel less stale. Less like what it had become. The guys showed up around 6. They came in laughing, loud, like a wave of life crashing through the front door. I smiled, because it was easier than explaining the ache under my ribs. Daniel was running late. Stuck at work, he texted. Something came up, don't wait for me. Make them feel at home. That's all he said. Make them feel at home. So I did. They plopped onto the couch like they owned it. Mark made a beeline for the chips. Jason complimented my outfit, said it was a shame Daniel wasn't here to see it. And Caleb just looked at me, held my gaze a little longer than he should have. At first, it was nothing. We'd all shared space before. Cookouts, birthdays, lazy Sunday afternoons. They were familiar. So when Jason said, "Let's pour one for Daniel anyway," I didn't think twice. One drink. One quick game. A little banter. A little laughter. The TV played in the background, but no one really watched. I sat across from them on the rug, wine glass in hand, knees curled under me. I hadn't laughed that freely in I don't know how long. Then something shifted. Not loud. Not obvious. Just a pause that lasted too long. A glance that lingered. A joke that brushed too close to the edge. Mark told me I had the kind of smile that ruins a man's plans. I laughed, but my cheeks burned. Jason agreed, said Daniel was lucky and maybe even a little blind. Caleb didn't say anything. He just kept watching. Like he was reading a book he'd already read before, waiting for me to realize I was in the middle of it. I should have changed the subject. I should have stood up and excused myself. Said I was tired. Said it was late. Anything. But I didn't. Instead, I poured another round. And when Jason reached for my glass, his fingers brushed mine. Too long to be casual, too light to be innocent. I felt it, the way my skin responded. The way my stomach flipped. I told myself it was just wine. Just a moment. Just tired nerves and old friends and loneliness playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew something had entered the room that hadn't been there before. Something that didn't belong, but was already settling in. If I had sent them away right then, maybe the story would have ended differently. Maybe I'd be telling you about a quiet night, a few harmless drinks, and the sound of the game humming in the background. But I didn't. I let them stay. And everything changed after that. I should have gone upstairs. I should have shut the door behind me, turned off the light, and reminded myself that I was a married woman. A good woman. A loyal wife. But I didn't. I stayed. I sat there on that rug, wine warming my throat, smiling at things that weren't really funny, laughing too hard at compliments I should have brushed off. And the worst part? I liked it. I liked being looked at like I mattered. I liked feeling seen again. It wasn't even about desire, not yet. It was about attention. It was about being noticed. Because it had been so long since Daniel looked at me like I was anything more than a routine. So long since his hand reached for mine just because. So long since my birthday was remembered without a calendar reminder, or an anniversary wasn't skipped because of a conference. I didn't want to betray him. That thought still felt like too far a line. But wasn't it also a kind of betrayal to leave me this empty, this invisible? I kept asking myself questions I wasn't sure I wanted answers to. Was this wrong? Or was it just what happens when love starts to starve? It's just harmless attention, I told myself. I'm not doing anything wrong. They're just being nice. I'm just being polite. But the voice inside me knew better. It whispered things I didn't want to hear. Things like, "You're enjoying this too much. You're opening doors you won't know how to close." I tried to drown that voice out, focused instead on the way Jason's eyes held mine a little too long. The way Mark's laughter made the room feel less lonely. The way Caleb didn't say much, but his silence made me feel more understood than any words could. And suddenly, memories started flooding back. Not of them. Of Daniel. The way he used to come home with flowers for no reason. The time we got caught in the rain and he spun me in the middle of the street. The way he once looked at me like I was his whole world. Where did that man go? Was he buried under deadlines and business trips and late-night calls? Or had I just stopped being his world without realizing it? I thought about all the nights I'd waited up, only for him to walk past me, mumbling "long day," as he disappeared into the bedroom. I thought about the dinners eaten in silence, the dry kisses on the forehead, the empty "love you too" as he rushed out the door. And then I looked around this room, at the three men laughing, joking, noticing, and I felt something I didn't want to name. Relief. Warmth. Resentment. Should I have shut it down? Maybe. But I didn't want to. That's the truth I didn't want to admit. I wanted to stay in that moment. I wanted to feel something again. Even if it wasn't safe. Even if it wasn't mine. There's a line between loyalty and self-neglect. And I had crossed it so many times for Daniel, I didn't even know where it was anymore. Sometimes, when you starve a heart long enough, it'll feast on whatever crumbs fall its way. The drinks kept coming. And with every pour, the room got warmer. Not just from the wine, but from the way their laughter lingered, from the looks that lasted a second too long, from the closeness that crept in without permission. I was on the couch now, Jason to my left, Mark on the floor, leaning back against the coffee table. Caleb across from me, quiet, always watching. We weren't talking about football anymore. We were talking about old stories, shared memories, silly things from their college days. And then Mark grinned and said, "Let's play something." Come on. Truth or dare. I laughed. Tried to wave it off. We're not 20 anymore. But Jason raised an eyebrow. Exactly. Which means we don't care what anyone thinks anymore. It started innocent. Truths about childhood crushes, dares like taking a shot without using your hands. We were just being silly. That's what I kept telling myself. But then Jason looked at me and asked, If you could trade lives with anyone in this room for a day, who would it be? I laughed, deflected. But they leaned in. They wanted answers. Real ones. And then Mark said it. I always thought you were the one who got away. For all of us. The room went still for a moment. The air, thick. I looked at him, thought he was joking, but his eyes didn't flinch. Jason chuckled. That's not a secret. We used to talk about it all the time. Back in the day, before Daniel made the first move. Then he turned to me. Do you know how many times we all tried to talk him out of it? Not because we didn't want him to be happy, but because we all wanted to be where he was standing. My breath caught. I felt it in my throat, that twist of emotion that wasn't quite flattery, wasn't quite fear. Something else. Something dangerous. I looked at Caleb. Still quiet. Still watching. But there was something in his eyes now. Not judgment. Not amusement. Just knowing. Like he'd already seen the end of this night and had accepted it. I should have left. Should have pushed back. Should have said, that's enough. But I didn't, because some part of me liked hearing it. Not because I wanted them, but because it felt good to be wanted. Even if just for a moment. Even if by the wrong people. Mark leaned closer. Truth or dare? His voice was softer now. I hesitated. Jason smirked. Don't be scared. We're just playing. But we weren't. Not anymore. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was something else. Something I couldn't quite name. And was too scared to stop. It was Jason. Of course it was. He leaned forward, eyes locked on mine, and said, all right then, dare. Let each of us have one slow dance with you. Just one. Nothing crazy. Old school. No strings. He smiled like it was all in fun. Like we were just bored adults reliving college games. But the way his eyes held mine, there was nothing innocent in it. I laughed. A weak, nervous sound. You're ridiculous. But I didn't say no. Because something inside me, something buried so deep it hadn't made a sound in years, sat up. And whispered. Just one dance. That's all. One moment. You deserve that, don't you? I stood. I don't even know why. Maybe I wanted to prove I wasn't affected. Maybe I wanted to feel wanted without the weight of what it meant. Or maybe I was just tired of saying no to myself. Jason moved first. He offered his hand with a mock bow. I placed mine in his. The living room light was dim. The wine bottle was nearly empty. And somewhere, a slow song played low from the speaker, one of those soft, lazy tracks that made everything feel a little closer. He pulled me in, not too close. Not at first. But with each step, each sway, the space between us disappeared. His hand rested on the small of my back, light, but not distant. And then he whispered, God, you feel like I always imagined. I didn't respond. I just kept swaying, telling myself it was still just a dance. When it was Mark's turn, he didn't speak. He just held me, softer than I expected, but his fingers drifted slow, uncertain at first, then lower. They paused just at the curve of my hip. And I felt the breath catch in my chest, not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't. Then came Caleb. The quiet one. He didn't even look at me when he stepped in. Just rested his hand in mine, his other arm wrapping around me with a stillness that said everything. And that silence? It said more than any of their words. He didn't compliment me, didn't flirt. But when our eyes met for the briefest second, I felt seen. Not as a woman in a game, but as someone starving for something she couldn't name. By the time the music faded, I was no longer standing on solid ground. I felt flushed. Breathless. Not from dancing, but from the weight of what we weren't saying. Because somewhere in those steps, something had shifted. It wasn't about Daniel anymore. It wasn't even about being wanted. It was about how far I'd let this go. About how close we were to a line that once felt permanent, but now felt paper-thin. I wish I could say I pulled away. I wish I could say I remembered who I was. But some storms don't ask for permission before they tear you apart. Morning has a way of making everything feel sharper, colder. Like the sun doesn't just rise, it reveals. I came downstairs in the same robe I'd worn the night before, bare feet on cold tile. A dull ache in my chest I couldn't explain away. Mark was already up, sitting at the edge of the couch, head in his hands like he hadn't slept. He looked up when I walked in, but his eyes didn't hold mine for long. Caleb stood in the kitchen, rinsing a glass under running water that didn't need rinsing. He didn't say a word, didn't even look my way, but his jaw was clenched tight, like he was holding something back, something loud. Jason leaned against the patio door, smoking a cigarette he never used to smoke. He turned when he heard me. His smile was small, too small, and it disappeared as quickly as it came. No one mentioned the night before. No one laughed. No jokes. No casual teasing. Just silence. Heavy, uncomfortable silence. And I felt it. All of it. The weight of what we didn't say. The line we didn't draw. The moment we didn't stop. Daniel came home that afternoon. He kissed my cheek like always absent, rushed. Dropped his suitcase by the door. Started talking about his meetings, traffic, some delay with his flight. He didn't notice the way my hands trembled as I handed him a cup of tea. He didn't catch the flicker in my eyes when he mentioned the guys. Didn't see the way Mark avoided his gaze. Or the way Jason's laugh sounded forced. Or the way Caleb left early, without finishing his drink. But I noticed. I noticed everything. And still, I said nothing. I smiled. I nodded. I pretended. Because what else was there to do? The house felt different now. Like the walls had been rearranged in the night. Same furniture. Same rooms. But nothing felt familiar anymore. And I couldn't unfeel what I'd felt. I couldn't unhear the way Jason whispered against my skin, or unsee the way Caleb held me like he was afraid to let go. We didn't cross the line. Not fully, but we danced on the edge of it until the edge didn't feel real anymore. And even though no one said a word, I could feel it in the way they moved. The way they left. Too quiet. Too fast. And now I was alone again. Not in the way I was before. Not in the aching, distant kind of loneliness I'd grown used to. This was different. This was the kind of alone that comes after something has been touched, then abandoned. Daniel sat beside me that evening, watching TV. His hand brushed mine. And I flinched, just slightly. Just enough. He didn't notice. But the walls did. And the thing about secrets? They don't stay quiet forever. The walls of the house held the secret. But walls have ears. And sometimes, they scream in silence. I've replayed that night in my mind more times than I can count. Not just the steps, the glances, the touches. But the feeling, the why behind it all. Because that's what haunts me the most. Not the what, but the why. Why did I stay downstairs? Why didn't I say no to the game? Why did I let them look at me that way? And worse, why did I want them to? There's guilt. Of course there's guilt. It clings to me in the quietest moments. When I'm folding laundry. When I'm setting the table. When I'm lying next to Daniel, his back turned, his breath steady in sleep. Unaware. But there's something else under the guilt. Something sharper. Anger. Not just at myself. But at him. At the man who once adored me and somehow stopped seeing me. Stopped touching me. Stopped asking questions that mattered. Stopped listening. I've asked myself 1,000 times, was it really my choice? Or was I just the last domino to fall after years of being slowly erased? It's easy to point at the moment, to circle it in red and call it betrayal. But what about all the moments before that? The missed anniversaries. The nights I sat across from him at the dinner table and felt more alone than when I was by myself. The way he stopped reaching for me. Stopped choosing me. What do you call it when someone leaves you slowly, inch by inch, without ever walking out the door? I remember what it felt like to be wanted again. To be held like I mattered. To feel something light up in me after years of